this is Grant Gordy with Peghead Nation, and today we're talking about some ideas for soloing up the neck using a standard tune that we all know and love. This is Long Journey Home. We're playing it in the key of C, and we're looking at some positions where we can kind of move the melody up the neck a little bit using triad inversions, and also how we can use those same shapes to, as Stefan Grappelli put it, abandon the melody entirely and just start playing around with soloing ideas where we're thinking a little more about soloing around the harmony as much as, but also embellishing the melody too, because it doesn't have to just be one or the other. So we're going to start in this C major 1-3-5 root position formation. So we've got our little finger. In this case, I like to play this little finger up on the, what is this, the 8th fret of the low E string, playing our low C note. And we've got the 3 of the C on that 7th fret with probably our ring finger, and then index finger on the 5th fret of the D string. And if you think about the melody of Long Journey Home, you'll notice that we've got the melody right there on top of the chord voicing. And then as we move through that melody, lost all my money but a $2 bill, we can see that all I do is I kind of continue that inversion up, and suddenly a lot of that rest of the melodic information is kind of sitting there waiting to be plucked, like so many ripe kiwis. It's all right there. So we've got so much of the harmonic information and a lot of the melodic information just right here in this one position between this root position, C major triad, and then this second inversion C major triad. We've got 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. So the first several bars of this tune is like one chord, one chord, one chord, one chord, one. So we've got 6 bars of just C major that we're kind of sitting on, right? So so we've got all of this C major stuff, and we can just kind of play around in this C major area for 6 whole bars before we go to the 4 chord at all. So what do we do? You know, we've got this hand position all ready to go, and we know we're in the key of C. That's really the $1 million question. You know, what do you do? We've got the raw materials, you know, but what do we build with our raw materials? Well, there's many answers to that. One of them is frustrating, which is just, well, you tell me. You got to make something up. And that's the nature of being an improviser, is we explore and we experiment and we find sounds that we like, or we find sounds that we don't like, and we realize, oh, I try to not do that in the future, which is all valuable insight as we go through our practice. But also in the more concrete realm, we have the idea of, well, we could kind of start with the melody, and we could work on just embellishing around the melody, right? So what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to embellish around the melody? And actually, there's a few, you know, there's a lot of different ways you could take that. You could say, well, okay, make sure I can play this little first bit of the melody. So make sure I have that like mapped out with my fingers so I know where the melody notes are, right? Okay, easy enough. Now, what is embellishment? Well, it might mean like playing, it could mean just adding some notes. So I could play like, I mean, that's technically embellishment. It still sounds a lot like the melody, but it is something different, you know? But then you could try, well, what if I essentially play the melody, but maybe I add a couple little ancillary notes here and there, and I can do that just as a method of experimentation, but I'll also probably notice that like certain things are gonna sound pretty cool. Like if I go, oh, that's just like a tiny little thing where I'm just adding a little bit of like the 6 of the chord. 5, 6, 1, 5, 6. It's a little kind of, you could think of it as kind of like a little major pentatonic shape. But already that's giving me a little bit of just some kind of a pathway that's a little bit outside of the melody. You know, and then I'm thinking about, well, I'm embellishing the melody, remember, so I gotta get up to that next high point in the melody. So again, I might just add some notes. I mean, this already sounds like I'm kind of doing something that's a little bit of a departure from the basic melody of the tune. You know, kind of sounds like I'm doing something. That time, what did I do? I touched a note that was actually above the melody note, but it's still, you can still hear that it sounds like it's connected to the melody of the tune. I just kind of, you know, touched a different part of the scale and different part of the harmony above it to kind of let us know that we're doing something that's not, I'm not just playing the melody, I'm doing something that's orbiting around the melody, but, you know, we're free to include some other stuff too. Where it gets really fun to me is where we can start to add some notes that are maybe not even necessarily in the C major scale. And there's certain things, you know, to me that just sound pretty good all the time. For example, like adding the flat 3 in addition to the natural 3. So we get this nice chromatic movement like 3 of C, flat 3, 2, 1. So suddenly we've got a little bit of like cool chromatic vocabulary. Like, okay, that already sounds like a cool little lick I could play. So I could play something like, wow, great, okay, no problem. So I've got this little cell of the chord shape, C major, and I've got these options for, okay, well here's 1, 2, going chromatically up into 3. But wait a second, if that's 3, and that's 1, and I have that possibility of chromatic movement, it stands to reason I could also do that any other place that I can find 1 and 3. So interesting. So actually this is also 1 and 3 in the same, I'm in the same position. So I could do that same lick like this. Wow, so already I've got like this cool lick, but not only this cool lick, but I've got it in 2 different places that are actually quite close to each other. So now like I've just wrung all kinds of like extra information out of this one little hand position. Wow, that sounds kind of cool. So I could try adding some of that to, you know, to my basic melodic embellishment. So hopefully that makes sense. That's a way we could sort of, you know, a couple different ways we could add some stuff to that that long 1 chord experience, the long 6 bars of the 1 chord. Now the next thing that happens is we've got our 4 chord, right? We've got $2 bill, Lord, $2 bill. And this is where it gets particularly interesting, where we start to think about playing the changes, this idea of like we're trying to embellish the melody, but we're also being aware of what the harmony is doing at all times. And we can see when we just play the melody of the tune, $2 bill, Lord, $2 bill. So in that spot, we've got the 3 of the 4 chord and the 5 of the 4 chord, which we could see lines up perfectly with this little F major triad right here, right? You can see the melody is built right into that little F major triad. And then I could do the same thing where I could maybe Well, I could try the same principle that I was doing on the C chord of playing 3 chromatic to 2 to 1. I could do the same thing for the 4 chord. Why not? I could go, there's the 3 of my 4 chord, so I could go, oh wow, now I've got, actually, I'm recycling the same bit of information, but suddenly I've now found like 3 relevant places to do kind of the same thing. So if I'm on the 1 chord, I've got this little fragment of information. I've got this information. And then if I'm on the 4 chord, I've got this. Wow, cool. Okay, that's the same thing. Just kind of using that one thing in 3 different, 3 different facets of the same line. So suddenly, there's a bunch of options that I could use for embellishment around this tune. Whoops. And then I did this, I wasn't quite technically ready to do it, but I tried to do the same thing with the 5 chord, where I started on the 3 of the 5 chord and I did that same thing. But that's the nature of improvising, is sometimes you crash and burn in front of the camera, and I'm just gonna pick myself up, dust myself off, and get back to the lesson here. So to illustrate, we've got this same idea where we can use this shape of the 5 chord. So we could say, here's my 5 chord in the key of C, right? Here's my G chord. Here's the 3. So here's a place I could do that same line, just using a little bit of chromatic movement from 3 down to 1. So now I'll try to insert this into my little scheme here. It starts to get a little bit like samey if you just keep playing that same lick over and over again, but we're giving ourselves just a little, this is a little thing we can try. We can also, or you could almost like write yourself a little etude where you're saying, okay, I'm going to find my different chord shapes. I'm going to find that one place where I have access to that bit of movement, use that to embellish around the melody, and pretty soon you're off to the races on Long Journey Home.